Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Wolfman Sam here with Johnny Buff Guns, and we are
Ugh.
Creatures of the Night.
How's that
Uh,
going, everybody?
yeah. Before we started this podcast, we were actually talking about Halloween Ends a little bit,
Yeah, yes.
the newer Halloween. For those of you who haven't seen it, we'll try to keep it spoiler safe, but just so you know, there's gonna be spoilers.
Right. Do you want to go first or
Why don't you go first, John?
well, I saw it in the theaters when it came out and I was really disappointed in it because it made no sense and I don't understand like it's like they were just making it for a paycheck and just rushing it to end the
Right.
series. And that kid I don't know who that actor who played Corey, but it's like were they like trying to like do something like different, like where they wanted it to originally be about a different character, they wanted to make it its own thing instead of
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it was
And
stupid.
I guess around here I'm gonna have to get into spoiler territory for those of
Yeah,
you who haven't seen it. You
yeah,
might want to go see it before we get into
yeah.
spoilers, but yeah, here's the spoilers. So the premise, I'm gonna give you a synopsis of the premise. The premise is that, much like Halloween 20 years later, this is basically Halloween 30 years later, 40 years later. I don't know how much. It's
Yeah,
disregarding all the sequels. That's what
yes,
this new trilogy is about. It's
yeah,
disregarding all the sequels except
right.
for the first movie.
The 2018, that was like the thing what I liked about that film, it didn't try too hard because whereas the last two, they tried way too hard.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. And that's the thing is this premise could have worked if it was just about Laurie and Michael kind of getting, final battle,
yeah,
because that
yes,
that's what happens. That's what happens basically the majority of the movie.
yeah,
But also you have this other premise of this guy, this awkward guy, which, could have worked.
it could have
This
been.
awkward guy who's kind of bullied and
Right,
misunderstood, and he falls in love
right.
with this girl.
Cliche.
And it's because, he accidentally in the beginning of the film, spoiler alert, he accidentally murdered a kid by accidentally knocking him off some steps after being locked in a room.
Well, yeah, they were like playing hide and seek, and he just,
Right, and this kid who wasn't really a nice kid decided
yeah,
to lock the babysitter in a
yeah,
room, which it just makes for a weak protagonist,
yeah,
and he in a panic opens the door and knocks the kid off the balcony of the
yeah,
steps, and the kid dies, and he's like framed for this murder, and that's why he's so awkward.
yeah,
Now, it
yeah,
could have worked if they could have committed to that. But
right.
then it happens to be like he finds old man Michael Myers, and there's some sort of spiritual connection or power
Yeah,
that
like
Michael Myers has. It reminded me of Halloween 6 a lot.
I could see that, or a little
It
bit of like
reminded me
Halloween
of Halloween
5,
5 or Halloween 6 a lot in that like spiritual connection between the two,
where
or the power of Michael Myers. And it just
Where Corey's gonna be like a new Michael Myers.
right, and that could have worked,
Eh,
but it was just it looked like you could practically see the writers, and I use this metaphor a lot, but you practically see the writers like grasping at straws, like, oh, we have this script. Oh, this is a good idea. We should
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
Okay, we have all these ideas. What should we do? Just
right.
Frankenstein them together and you know, just
Or
stitch them all together.
here's
Just give them all because we don't know what this movie's gonna be.
here's my joke. It's the next movie is gonna be Michael Myers in space, or he fights Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, his version of Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein.
Yeah, they could do that. Or
Yeah.
I say just commit to the old bit of Michael Myers in a nursing home. Just do it. Do it. Like
He
make it a
fights the Golden
comedy. Make
Girls.
it like Michael Myers is so old that he's like killing instead of teenagers, just old people at a
Old
nursing
people.
home. They're and it's like a dark comedy. They're running around
Right.
with catheters
It'll
and like, and he
it'll be
and
like
he's still like he's even slower. He's, and they have
It'll
like a slow version of the theme. Dun, 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 dun,
it'll be like
dun.
it'll
Like
it'll be
that
like
kind of stuff. Like I'd say commit to the ridiculousness because there's really nowhere to go. They're going to probably reboot it again, which,
right. They
I
probably are.
I don't know.
It'll be like Bubba Hotep.
Yeah, old man Michael Myers. I'd say if they're going to do
Oh,
because having the Michael Myers be an old man,
yeah.
is just not working, and
No.
they're gonna have to reboot it. There's nowhere
Yeah.
there to go.
I
You
don't
know?
expect Jamie Lee Curtis to come back like ever. I think this is like the last time she's ever gonna
No,
do the
she
part.
shouldn't. It's
Right.
getting to the point where it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like I keep using him as a reference, but it's like if Rob Zombie kept doing the Devil's Rejects movies.
Right.
Eventually it's gonna get to the point where it's like, okay,
Stale.
we have so and so and company, and
Right.
they're old, and
Right.
it doesn't have that same magic.
Well, if they did a sequel to Devil's Reject, the downside is what's his name? Sid Haig passed away not that long
Well, they
ago.
did. They did do a sequel to
Oh,
Devil's
right,
Rejects,
right,
Free
right.
from Hell,
Yes.
which was a nice little, I call it a side story because it doesn't like it's smaller. It's a smaller
Right,
story, and I hope he doesn't do any more. Because
right.
I know Rob Zombie fans. I've discussed this a bunch of times in the podcast. Rob Zombie fans, they kind of want the rejects thing to keep on going, and I'm like, it's gonna get to the point where Sherry and company is gonna look kind of
Yeah,
old and decrepit, and
right,
not gonna have that same magic.
right,
You know,
right.
you're better off moving on to a new idea.
I think Rob Zombie's not really the kind of guy. Because I remember when he did the first Halloween remake, and he said that he didn't want to do the sequel. He said he just wanted to do like a one film and didn't really see a
Right,
point of.
right. And
Because yeah,
they commissioned
he was
the
basically
studio
forced.
commissioned him to do a
Yeah,
sequel.
the
Uh,
Weinsteins were forcing him to do a sequel, and he said he had a heart. That's the reason why the second movie failed because of his like his fallout with the Weinsteins and so much like
right, right.
studio
And I
interferences.
know there's kind of a mixed whole theory about that because he said it himself when he did the second one. He was like, okay, here's where I'm going to take the reins and kind of just do my own thing with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's like, okay, I got to commission a sequel. I might as well just make my own thing with it.
yeah.
And I
And
mean, that didn't sit well with a lot of people.
no,
I
no.
think his second film had good moments, but it
Yeah,
wasn't as good as
the
his
first
first
movie.
remake.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I admit I haven't
which,
seen the second one in years.
yeah, I mean, say what you will about the first, his remake. Um, the one negative thing I have to say about him. He can't write teenagers. He
No,
cannot write teenagers.
I
I
didn't like
know I
Scout.
know he's going for like kind of over the top slutty teenage, which they
Yeah.
originally kind of were, but they were believable.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
not well. The thing about Laura, she was like the smart, innocent, and like relatable
Right,
character
right,
that we could
right.
relate to. Whereas in the remake, they kind of made Scout Taylor Compton a little bit skanky, a little bit more than
Yeah, a
like
little more
innocent.
skankier
Yeah, yeah,
and what he did. The positives about that movie is he actually gave Michael Myers some sort of sympathy.
a little bit. Yeah, like
I
I,
really like the stuff with the family
yeah.
that he did, and
I don't hate the it's 50-50. Like parts of it, it's like take it
yeah,
or leave it.
like I said, there's some good
It's
and
hit or
some bad.
miss. Like I
You
thought
know,
Sherry that was like the only thing I liked of Sherry Moon as Michael Myers' mom because we really feel for her what she went through when Michael kills his sister and the well then again the boyfriend was an asshole so it's like not a big loss for them.
right, right,
And after when
right,
Michael Myers kills the nurse, her world is it's all falling apart where to the point she feels like it's suicidal where she just feels like she can't bear the pain and
right. Yeah,
suffering
that her
of
son
what
is a psychopath, and
yeah
I
yeah
really enjoyed the stuff with Malcolm McDowell.
yeah he was okay he was okay.
Yeah, I
Not
thought that was some cool.
he's no Donald Pleasance, but just an okay part of that
I
movie.
mean, honestly, Donald Pleasance is Donald Pleasance. He will always
Yes.
be Dr. Loomis to me.
Yes, which I agree. That
But
was
Malcolm McDowell's not a bad choice.
no,
Not a
no, he
bad
was a
choice.
good choice. No,
You
he was
know,
good.
Malcolm McDowell in his own right is awesome.
I give credit to Rob Zombie for like really giving like character actors who are not given enough credit to,
Yeah, that's
like
what I like about his movies. He gives a
yeah.
lot of, unknown, well, maybe not
Well,
unknown, but like
no.
B movie actors sort of their light.
Yeah. He's
And
not
it's cool because that's really Bruce Campbell said it best. The B movie actors are the working class actors.
which I agree.
They're
They're
they're the
they're
guys that are maybe not be putting out the best movies, but
no.
they're trying their damnedest.
Yeah, which I agree. Totally,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that can be like sometimes a lot more entertaining to watch than the highly like big. I mean, don't get me wrong, nothing against the big high profile actors, but sometimes you need to watch the B movie actors for like thinking, you know what, these
Right.
guys deserve a lot more credit than they realize.
Right. And some B movie movies
Right.
become A movies. I mean, look at
Sometimes.
Evil Dead.
Yes. Yes.
Evil Dead, Dead Alive,
Yes.
even Nightmare on Elm Street to some degree.
I would say that was
Some
more of a
degree. Some degree.
well, I would say that was more like a bigger budget. Well, I mean, when you look at like Wes Craven, like how he
Yeah,
started
Last House
out,
on the Left
yeah,
and
I
stuff
know.
like
It's
that.
last year I did a video, a movie review of that on my YouTube channel, and it's a good movie, but I can respect why maybe not everybody likes it. It is a very heavy, touchy film subject.
Yeah,
It's
it's not it like I said, I
yeah,
said this before. Really going back to Rob Zombie, he's sort of the modern day 1970s version
yes, which I
of
can
Wes
agree on
Craven.
that. Absolutely.
He's that version of Wes, the
Yes.
1970s,
Well, especially how
like
like he
hills have
shoots
eyes kind of thing,
like
you know.
he shoots his movies in like grindhouse style, which I do kind of like that a little bit because I mean I haven't seen a lot of grindhouse films. I really admire like classic grindhouse films from like the
Right,
70s
right. And
because
the thing I like about him the most is he doesn't do it in that Quentin Tarantino like wink and a
no,
nod. You get that, like self-aware type thing. I hate that.
yeah. And the thing
You
too
know.
about Last House on the Left, what I find fascinating, it's interesting to see this is where Craven started his career before being a high profile director, what he would turn out to be later in his
Right.
life.
And it shows you as an aspiring film director, if you happen
Yeah,
to just love film, your film doesn't have to be the prettiest or have the
right.
the
It's
biggest budget or the well-known actors. You could start from the ground
it
up.
fascinates me to read about that with any film director where they started before they became high profile directors and Craven's because what's interesting I read how like before he was a well-known film director he was a professor but then he directed porn films under a fake name and then eventually he
Right, right.
got
I know about that too.
yeah I don't know what porn films he directed that's the only thing I'm not so sure about like what they I tried looking that up but I couldn't find them I don't know why if it's
Yeah,
because
it's sort of amazing when you really look into
yeah
a
yeah
director's career.
yeah
Peter Jackson, same thing. He
yeah
started in B horror. He was a
yes, and
B horror guy.
what was that
Bad
film he
Taste,
ate?
Dead
Yes,
Alive, or
yes,
Brain Dead, if you prefer.
yeah.
You know, um,
I saw Bad Taste with a friend of mine, and it's again interesting, but it wasn't the best though.
I like I said, it had moments. Had
Yeah, yeah.
I,
I
you and
give
I,
Jackson
we both appreciate practical effects, which
yes,
it
which
had
yes,
plenty.
yes, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, then again, I think Dead Alive was a bigger budget for practical because every time I watch that movie, I joke to myself, how much money did this cost him to like for the blood, the guts, and
Yeah,
the
yeah. And again, for those of you who haven't seen either Bad Taste or
Dead
Dead
Alive?
Alive, check them out if you're into like zombie alien type movies. Them
Yeah.
they're both the little B films that could.
Yeah. And besides
If
that,
you if you
I
like
also
practical effects and a ton of gore, especially when coming to Dead Alive.
I enjoy the like over the top performances, like I kick ass for the Lord.
Oh yes, yes. There's a lot of like that's the thing about Dead Alive. As gory as it is, it's got like this. It's almost like Return of the Living Dead in that it has sort of this balance of dark humor and just
Yeah.
goofball humor. But It's a very, very gory film.
Right.
Just so the audience knows going into it, and they're like they see all this stuff. It's super, super gory. I'm not really sure, how much blood they actually used. You can
I
make
don't
a
know either.
counter basically out of that.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Or make a drinking, but don't drink and drive while doing it though.
No, no, don't
No,
drink and
no, no, no,
drive.
no, no. Just
I wouldn't make a drinking game out of it. You'd
no, no. I'm
probably
just
end up
I'm just kidding,
under the
guys.
table with cirrhosis.
No. I also, besides that, love. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but the twist is also very good too. Like, not you didn't see it coming too, despite
Right, right, right.
yeah. But anyway, watch the movie and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll be surprised how despite it's like over the top, it has a good twist and a nice little dramatic effect at the end of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, speaking of horror films, I'd like to touch upon a film I saw just completely out of curiosity. It was on Tubi.
Right. Okay.
For those of you that don't know Tubi, you can watch films for free. They have ads, but you can watch them
Yeah.
for free. So
Yes.
I come across this film, and I swear to you, Quentin Tarantino must have seen this film.
What is it
It's
called?
it's a Japanese film. It's subbed. Um, it's called Scorpion Prisoner. I forget the number, but it's called Scorpion Prisoner, right?
Okay.
Female prisoner or something like that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's like this jailhouse horror type movie, and the way it's shot and the way it's presented, my God, Quentin Tarantino ripped this off for Kill Bill and
I never
and a
seen
lot of his
Kill Bill.
in a lot of his movies. Well, if you know that style of Quentin Tarantino of like, slow
Yes.
moving,
Yes.
music, kind of building, retro kind of thing. This was the type of movie that Quentin Tarantino would have emulated or probably would have remade, a lot of what Kill Bill is. But to give you a premise, without giving too much away, there is a woman that gets involved with this mobster, this cop actually, right? And she gets involved with this kind of yakuza, and this cop who she falls mad in love with actually like not only like frames her kind of sort of, but rapes her. Gets
Okay.
a group of Yakuza guys to rape her, and it drives her mad, and she goes to try and kill this dude, thus
Right.
putting her in prison
Okay.
for attempted murder.
Right.
And the prison in this type of prison, it's like the worst prison. They torture the guards.
Okay.
They torture her, and she all she does is just kind of lay there.
Right.
Doesn't speak, doesn't do anything, and there are things that happen. She's able to basically fight back without fighting back, if that makes sense. Like things happen, like she, trips a wire without moving, and it causes like a fire, or somebody
Right.
trips and gets boiled alive in their own soup or whatever. But yeah,
Hmm.
check it out.
Interesting.
It's a different type of movie. It's a little slow in the beginning because
Well,
it's very artsy. It's very like slow. It's very musically driven.
I sat through The
But
Shining, so
give it a watch. If you're into something different, it is very, very violent for a 1970s film, an early 1970s film. It's definitely that like exploitation type of movie.
right.
Um, but I can definitely see where Tarantino got his influence for his movies.
Right.
The way this movie is shot
Yeah.
and presented.
As my film professor said, a lot of these directors are inspired from films they watched, either from movies as a kid or from film
Yeah,
classes they took.
yeah. Some are more obvious than others, but
Right.
you know, it's funny when you go into the history of different directors.
Yeah.
Um, I was also watching a thing on Christopher Lee as
Right.
well,
Okay.
and the dude. I discussed this last time on the podcast. The dude basically did everything from heavy metal in his late
Yeah.
80s. Like he had this heavy metal band in his late 80s to being royalty, a descendant of Charlemagne,
Right.
and playing every role imaginable. Also being an opera singer. I mean, we could talk all day. It'd be a whole another podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good idea. Christopher Reeve's
Also
podcast.
a World War II vet.
Yes.
Um, Worked for intelligence. Did not kill Nazis, despite the embellished reputation. He did not kill Nazis. He was like
Wow.
an information, a desk guy.
Right.
But he saw he saw some action. He saw people get stabbed. That's why in the Lord of the Rings, when they were
Yes.
doing his death scene, and Jackson, said, "Oh, I want him to be stabbed and for him to sound like, this." And Christopher Lee said, "No, I know what, in reality," he said, "I actually know what people sound like when they get stabbed." In
You
his
would
in his
know.
own words, he said, "Do you have any idea what someone sounds like when they're stabbed?"
Wow.
And I mean, this, Sir Christopher Lee, because he got knighted as well.
Yeah, he did. He
But
did.
Sir Christopher Lee, he is
A
he.
legend.
Somebody put it best. He is the real life anime protagonist.
Yes.
He is the hero of his own story. Because
Oh
like,
yeah.
if you do your research and what he accomplished, it's like,
Awesome.
man, the guy must have had a story for days. He met Tolkien, Christopher Tolkien, in person. He was a
Right.
huge, huge fan. And it's funny because there's a story of Christopher Lee, of all people, fanboying over Tolkien, right?
Right.
Right. When he was a child, he met Rasputin's assassins.
Wow. That
Uh,
part I never knew.
his first wife was this French duchess,
Really.
and there's a whole story of how the father didn't want them to be married, and he said to Lee, he's like, if you can get like the French count or whatever royalty, if you can get his blessing, you can marry my daughter.
Interesting.
And Christopher Lee, being Christopher fucking Lee, says okay, and he gets the blessing. He says,
I
I
I
know
have a
I know him personally.
I have a documentary on Christopher Lee that I haven't gotten. I should like definitely look into it, especially how like this October I'm doing Hammer movie reviews of like the
Yeah,
Hammer
there's
of Dracula, Frankenstein's, and
yeah,
the Mummy.
yep. And speaking of Frankenstein, it actually goes into a little bit of the production of Frankenstein. Do you know that scene where he busts through the door?
Yes, yes.
Well, there's a little behind the scenes about that. So
Okay,
somebody had the bright idea in production to actually bolt that door shut for
really?
real,
Wow.
right? They bolt that door shut, and he was supposed to burst through it,
Right, right, right.
right? And he actually dislocated his shoulder
Ouch.
trying to burst through the door. He still burst through the door,
Right.
but he broke the lock and everything, but he dislocated his shoulder. So when you watch that scene, that scene where he actually bursts through the door, that's not a gimmick door.
Right.
That's a real door.
Hence realistic for the time period, especially like nowadays where everything is all green screen for movie
Yeah.
sets.
Yeah. There's
Those
also a really hilarious story of because him and Peter Cushing were actually really, really good friends.
they were. It's amazing. Every time I watch them, I'm thinking to myself, they play enemies in the movies and in real life offset. They were the best
Yeah,
like buddies.
absolutely, really good friends.
Yeah.
One of the things they would do on set, just to entertain each other, was they would quote Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yes, yes. I read that because my friend said that they were apparently, I don't know how true this is, but they were at like some movie theater watching Bugs Bunny cartoons. They were laughing so loud they were told to leave.
And like, just to wrap your head around that,
Right.
two of the greatest
Horror
actors in
actors.
cinema and in horror films,
Yeah,
laughing at Bugs Bunny cartoons.
right.
Like, it's just
Hey,
so surreal.
hey, good taste. I love Bugs Bunny cartoons too myself. I still watch them to this day. But those are the best classic of cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also to kind of cap this off, um, me being a music fan and you being a music fan and a fan of
Right.
heavy metal,
Right.
Ozzy Osbourne quoted as saying that Christopher Lee's Dracula was the inspiration for Black Sabbath.
I could see that.
So, not only did Christopher Lee form his own heavy metal band, he sort of inspired heavy metal as a whole.
Right. Right.
But, that's just it's Christopher Lee.
Right. Right.
I mean, like he's a guy that if he was still alive today, he passed away.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would love to have him on this podcast. He would
So
have
would I.
stories for days.
Oh yeah, we would be
He
here
would have
for
stories for days.
we'll be here till like Christmas of 2020
Yep, yep,
2023.
yep. And it's
And
like he did everything from opera to
well, I don't know. Since we talked about Halloween, I don't know if you know this. He was offered Halloween for playing Dr. Loomis, but
right.
he turned it down because he didn't like the script. Thing it was going to be he thought it was going to be a failure. But when it came out, it was a big hit. He's like, I regret this decision.
Well,
Turning
that's
it
not
down.
even the first time he turned down a big movie, because you know what
Right.
the other big movie he turned
What
down was?
what did he turn down?
Airplane.
What?
He was supposed to play Leslie Nielsen's part in Airplane. He turned it down.
Wow.
He turned it down because he didn't think it was going to be a success.
Oh my
And he went
God.
on to do a Spielberg film called like 1941 or something like that.
I
Some
saw that
comedy,
once. It's funny you
some
say that. Like, I'm not really. I saw that once. That was like one of the least of my favorite Spielberg films. I didn't enjoy
right,
that.
right,
Wasn't that funny?
right,
Wow.
exactly.
Christopher Lee
But
turning down Airplane. Could you imagine? Don't call me
yeah, and
Shirley.
and he's quoted in interviews and saying he regretted that role.
Right.
He regretted not taking that.
Even even Cushing was also offered the part, but what happened was Carpenter tried getting in contact with his agent, but his agent said get lost to Carpenter. And so
Right,
It's
right,
not Cushing's fault. It was the agent that was being an asshole to
right.
John Carpenter. Because
And
Carp,
also,
Car
here's a really cool fact for those of you that are fans of the Wicker Man, the original Wicker Man from '72.
not the Nicolas Cage remake.
Not the Nicolas Cage one,
There's an
though
original.
there are fans of those. That's okay.
That's
But
okay,
the
but
original 1972 Wicker Man that Lee was a part of, he actually, believe it or not, because the film was so low budget, he actually funded a lot of the
he
film
did. He did.
itself, and a lot of the actors actually had to work for free.
He actually
He
said that
actually did work for free.
he did. He's because he said he was so like and into the movie, the character, the story, and because I think at that time, because of like he was like burnt out with like playing Dracula so many times, it felt like
Right,
a breath of fresh
right.
air for him because
He
of
was,
how
yeah.
it was something
He,
different. He wasn't a blood sucking vampire; he was just a regular character in a regular movie.
yeah, and that the original is a great movie.
It is, no, it is. It's excellent. I mean, I don't really know if you would say it's the Citizen Kane of horror, but it definitely was
No,
an
no,
excellent.
but it's a great movie.
It
It's a great
is.
movie all its own.
Yeah. And in a
Yeah,
way, because that was like I mean, I don't know how true this is. That was sort of like the beginning of folklore horror, because especially how like that seems to be popular these
yeah,
days.
72, that's about right.
Yeah.
Because
Midsummer was a folklore horror film where that director was inspired from Wicker
right,
Man, but
right. And the funny thing about that film, even though if you see a lot of shots and it looks like spring, it was
yeah,
actually filmed in Wales where it was ice cold.
that's
And people, you see these clothing that they have to
are you
wear is
talking about
very like,
Wicker Man or Midsummer?
No, Wicker Man. Wicker
Okay,
Man.
okay,
Talking
gotcha,
about Wicker
gotcha,
Man. So they had
gotcha,
to wear like, spring clothes in like I think it was Wales. It was some
okay,
northern country where it was
okay,
ice cold.
right, right.
And despite everything, everybody pulled through. Um, but Lee says it's one of his favorite films.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was like his favorite role out of all like roles he did out throughout his career, he said, because of how, again, fresh, original, and just glad that he wasn't doing Dracula at that point.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But also, not to turn this into a Christopher Lee podcast, but there's so many facts.
Yeah.
Um, so his cousin, He has a very famous cousin.
I did not know
Ian
that.
Fleming is his
Wait a
cousin.
minute. As in the same guy who did the Ian
James
Fleming
Bond
James
movies is his
Bond.
cousin.
I did not know that.
Is his
Wow.
cousin.
Huh.
And
So he,
and
he was in a Bond
um
film, but I forget which one though.
he wanted to he Fleming wanted Christopher to play um I think it was Doctor No
Okay.
in the first Bond film,
Okay.
which is funny because in the books, um, the book version of Bond is modeled after Christopher Lee, as a
Okay, I
very
did not know
young
that.
Christopher Lee, like
Right.
40 something.
Interesting. I did
So
not
it's
know
really,
that.
really, really funny. It Same thing with going back to Tolkien. When he met Christopher Lee, Tolkien said, "You, if there's ever a film version of Lord
Lord
of
of the
the
Rings.
Rings, you can play Gandalf."
Well, he didn't play Gandalf, but he played what was that character's name in Lord of the
Saruman
Rings?
played
Saruman,
the
thank you.
villain, which
I
is
haven't
funny.
I haven't seen it in a
Because that
while.
ties into another story of when he auditioned. When he auditioned, he thought he was auditioning for Gandalf.
Right, I could see the confusion
But
there.
when Jackson told him, "No, you're playing Saruman," he was a little defeated. You know, he was defeated. But uh, um, but that was like the second. That was actually the second role that what's his name, Magneto. I
Oh yeah,
forget.
Ian
Ian McKellen.
McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
Yes, yes.
Ian. That was the second role that Ian McKellen actually took from him. The first
Right.
role was Magneto. Christopher Lee was
Oh, I did
supposed to
not
play
he I did
Magneto.
not I did not know that, but then again, I actually like Ian McKellen as Magneto a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think he
Yeah.
was a great fit.
He was, no,
The funny
and
thing
so is
about
Michael
Lord of the Rings,
Fassbender too.
yeah, the funny thing about the Lord of the Rings too is the two of them, Lee and McKellen, would laugh about being the oldest men on set.
Well, now I think McKellen really is like one like older now compared to like back when he did Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yep.
I think there was a rumor recently about another like a fourth Lord of the Rings, and it's like,
No,
kind of kind of pushing
it's
it.
funny. I never really been crazy about Lord of the Rings,
That's
but
okay.
it's all the new stuff is kind of making me want to watch the old stuff, the Jackson stuff, and maybe read
Yeah.
some of the books.
I
But to
mean,
get the complete version of the Lord of the Rings films, it's like 8 hours. It's like 8 hours. It's like an 8 hour film. Like to get like the complete version. I'm
I'm
like,
not.
that's a life choice,
No,
man.
I'm not that desperate. And also,
That's a life choice.
I have a
But
confession.
diehard fans,
I've never seen the Hobbit movies.
I have. And I wish I would have seen. I saw the one of the Lord of the Rings movies a long time ago, but it's like a fever dream. I don't remember really that much. I remember a Gollum.
Right.
Well, pre-Gollum. I actually remember the scene where because it frightened me as a kid.
Right.
I remember the scene where I think it was I forget the character's name. It's been so long, but there was a
Been a
character trying to
while.
reach for the ring, and he's like, "My ring," and then you see the face.
Oh
Ah! You
yes,
know.
it was like a friend or something. Like I remember the third film opens up as a small little like backstory prequel to Gollum, how it's just a regular guy, but then the ring like possessed
Right.
him.
The
It like
ring
took a
corrupted him.
yes, yeah. So basically, again, a misunderstood character. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen. I mean, I do like them. I'm not like obsessed with the Lord of the Ring movies, and as a kid growing up, I saw them in the theaters. They were fun to see because they were so big and red hot at that time.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that was probably one of the biggest movies of the
the
early
decade.
2000s for
Yeah, it
sure.
was. It was. It's then it's ironic how like Peter Jackson after that did which brings me to my point. This past week marks the 90th anniversary when King Kong, the original King Kong, came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
90 years. Wow.
Yeah. As a little boy, when the Peter Jackson remake came out, I saw the original on DVD, and I was just so like blown away and fascinated. I'm like, how are they doing all this stuff for 1933? All these like cool practical effect where it's all stop motion, and it's
Yeah, and people today definitely take it for granted. You
yeah,
know, because it's funny. The newer generations look at the old stuff, and listen, old stuff has age. But
Yes.
listen, if you watch a film that you grew up with and you expect it not to age, that's ridiculous. What's gonna
It's
look shiny and new now is gonna age probably
poorly.
worse
Well, King
because
Kong
it's
to me
not.
is aged
Most
well.
films aren't practical effects.
Right.
Most films are CGI, and I don't care
True.
what you
True.
say. I don't care how good CGI gets. It'll never be as good as practical effects.
But
Never.
well, I'm one of the few minorities that was like not that enthusiastic about Peter Jackson's remake because it was more of like a tribute rather than like where he made King Kong his own, and some of the effects again
Right,
all
right. It
green
was, it
screen.
was okay. It
Yeah, I
was
remember.
okay. I remember
I
the video game more than I remember the film.
Yeah, because to me when I saw the remake, I was just sitting there. I'm like, why am I not feeling right about this? I'm just sitting there like not like when I saw the original, I was just like blown away and shocked and amazed. Whereas Jackson's remake, I was just not like all that excited. I wasn't, and of
Right,
course,
right.
and that's
Sometimes bigger is not better.
yeah, yeah. And Jack Black did not take me as playing Carl Den. I'm like, no, Jack Black, I don't
No,
think
no.
so.
Jack Black plays Jack Black.
Yeah. If they
It's
maybe like Josh Brolin could have been a better choice. I can definitely see
yeah.
Josh
No,
Brolin.
I could have seen that. Yeah,
Yeah, and also
but
like all Peter Jackson's films, it's too long and it's a drought where you're just like, okay, you got to cut this out, that part.
yeah, having long films isn't really the problem. It's what you do with those time. I mean,
Right.
the westerns of the '60s, perfect example. Once Upon a Time in the West.
Right.
It's a long film, but it uses its time to build to something.
Right.
If
When
you're using that time to build to something, and
right.
that something pays off in the end, then it has an excuse to be long. But if you're just
Well,
making it long to make it long and artsy, you
yeah.
can cut it down. I mean, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, especially among Marvel fans. But I think Endgame could have been shorter.
Right. I can
Could have
agree on
been
that.
maybe chopped down at least maybe an hour, like not an hour long, but maybe cut an hour off of it.
Right.
Because it got to the point where, as much as I love the characters, like at the end of it, I was like, I never want to see a Marvel superhero film again.
Yeah.
Not
Right.
because it was bad, but because it dragged.
Yeah, that's
It
true. I can
absolutely dragged. These characters that we love, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, these characters that we love, and we should be excited that we're getting these extended things and all,
yeah.
these crossovers and stuff. By the end, you're just like, just, just end it.
I
Just
think
end it.
I think the downside is that there's like so many characters. Like, how are you gonna like fit them into like one? Is the downside of
Right, right, right. Exactly.
yeah,
There
yeah.
were
But
there are
still,
a
I
couple
love them
characters
too.
that fell from the wayside. You know, I I'm sorry, I can never get behind Black Widow. I
I didn't
know
see
people
it.
like Black Widow, but in every film that Scarlett Johansson is in, she's just there.
Right.
She's just
I'm
there.
like
She melds into the background. I can never give myself a reason to care. And that's why the film bombed so hard because no one really could care.
right. For
But,
my personal reason, because at the time when things were on lockdown during COVID, when things were slowly getting back to normal, it's like I wasn't interested or desperate to see what was new for like Marvel films at that
no,
time.
no, because
Yeah,
they were pushing these mediocre Marvel stuff that was always
yeah,
sort of pushing sort
yeah,
of some political message, and
yeah.
we
We
as
talk,
fans, I'm sure people out there can agree, we just want to see something entertaining.
yeah.
You
With
know,
with the
I don't care if what your politics are, left, right, center, it doesn't matter. I
right
just want to see
action
enjoyable
and yeah,
films.
same. Like
I don't want to be preached at and saying like, oh yeah, we need to change, blah 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 blah. No,
right,
no, it's just stupid, and that's one of the reasons why it died, because or it's dying, I should say,
right.
but it's
With
dead to me.
with
Much like Star Wars and so many others,
with
because they politicized a lot of stuff.
yeah, with the topic of like 3 hour movies that we discussed before, that I feel like when I watch an old movie like Gone with the Wind or Doctor Zhivago, they're long, but I think they're well entertaining and well done. Like
Right. because it goes back to the point I was just saying. If you
Yeah.
use that time wisely, then it doesn't feel like 3 hours.
Right. You're like more invested in these characters because especially with the themes about in Dr. Zhivago of like, democracy and dictatorships and taking what I'm sorry, wait, hold on a second.
He'll be back. Hold on. But yeah, yeah. I mean, like I was saying before, it's all about how you use that time, and if you make it to where it just drags, it's just not going
Sorry
to do.
sorry about that, gentlemen. That was my grandfather. Anyway, yeah, as I was saying, like Dr. Zhivago, you're like really invested in these characters because despite what's going on with the crazy world, you have these two characters who are like
Right.
intimately like falling in love for each other. And also despite with Gone with the Wind, despite hopefully I don't get like backlash for this, despite yes, it's a Civil War time period, and despite yes, the themes on racism and slavery, but you have to understand that was the historical time, and that's what history was. You can't change it.
Right,
You have to
right.
learn
And
from it.
that's the other side of the coin with film. It's, of course you're going to look at something and go, "Oh, well, that's dated or that wouldn't fly today," but it was acceptable at the time.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, especially how in Doctor Zhivago, the Omar Sharif's character is married to his cousin. Again, different time period. That wasn't
Yeah,
acceptable
yeah,
in
different
today's
time period.
world.
And that's what a lot of people have to realize before getting offended
Right.
over some
Yeah.
movie
Let's
because,
just because I bring this up because I remember watching Avatar in the movie theater, the sequel. I was so bored with it for 3 hours. I could not care less about these characters. Then
right.
when I went home, I watched Gone with the Wind and Doctor Zhivago. And you know what? I'm really more invested in this than I was in Avatar 2.
Yeah, it's all about the writing and the act and the
Yeah.
caliber of actors you've got,
Well, yeah.
because you know, like I said, less politics, more just entertainment,
Yeah.
you
Well, I
know?
mean, well, even though I didn't like the sequel to Avatar, I did like again, nice visuals, but just the story and the characters. I'm not like
Right.
really drawn or sucked into it. I'm not like really into this world. I just find myself
Right. That's
yeah.
well, that's why I really couldn't get into the first one.
Right.
I just couldn't
I didn't
get into it. It seemed a little
I didn't hate
personally. I know people like it, and
yeah. I
a
didn't
lot of
hate
people like it. Listen,
I'm not saying I hated it. I just was I don't know, it must have been me, I guess. It happens. It's not everything's for everybody.
yeah, everything's subjective. Film
Yeah.
is subjective.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a Rob Zombie guy. There are people out there that either love Rob Zombie or they hate Rob
That's okay.
Zombie.
That's okay. Like I said,
You
for
know,
me, human being, he's cool, but movies, it depends. And
right, right. That's fine.
yeah,
We all have our own favorites, all
yeah,
right?
exactly.
But
It's true.
but
Taste.
yeah, if films could be more entertaining and less political, that'd be great.
Right.
You know.
I always tell people if you want to work in films or be an act, watch the classics. You'll get
Yeah,
something out of it. You'll learn something.
yeah. And the thing about the older movies, it teaches you that you don't have to have that big budget.
True. True.
You don't
True.
have to have. I mean, like it's funny. I'm gonna go back to an old channel on YouTube. He's still going. His name is Blinky Productions. Shout out to
Yes.
Blinky Productions.
Yeah, that guy. I used to watch that guy a lot in high school because I was just so like
Yeah, same,
I probably
same.
liked I probably liked his film versions of like Daredevil at the time more than I did Ben Affleck's.
Yep. For those of you that don't know, he does fan films of everything from superheroes to original films.
Yeah,
But his films, check him out on YouTube. Um,
I haven't
if they're
seen
still
him in
around.
years. I gotta see what his new stuff is. I lost track after a while.
But my point is, he has done a lot of films or a lot of fan films that arguably a lot of times are better than what we get in Hollywood.
That's true.
He did one film in particular where the actress he used, it was a Batman film, and the
Yes,
actress he
yes,
used for Harley Quinn looked like costume wise and acting
yeah,
wise,
yes,
straight out of the comic books or straight out of the animated series.
right,
Better than Hollywood could ever put together with whatever budget they have.
right.
You know,
He also did like his own like Escape from New York, but I don't remember like what
right?
it
Escape from
is.
New York, Escape from New Jersey.
That's it. Yeah,
And that was great too. But
yeah.
like I said, the fan films are going to be the
The
definitely the future.
future.
of
It
film.
is because of like how they're
You're
more
gonna
on like
have
location.
yeah, you're gonna have a lot of fan films. You're gonna have a lot of independent films because films is film as a medium is not going to die. It's just not going to be Hollywood film.
Wow, it's gonna
You
be
know,
all on
Hollywood
YouTube.
is dying. It's
Yeah.
dying,
Yes.
and sad to see, but listen, it's going to be the fans' chance finally
Yeah.
to make their own stuff.
Yeah.
If they
As,
want to make the new Star Wars or
yeah.
how it actually is with the expanded universe and all that,
Right.
do it.
Well,
But
I remember back in the early days of YouTube, if people like tried doing their own Star Wars, it was always like
yep,
a big
the
copyright
Force.net.
issue.
Shout out to the Force.net.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's gonna be the future, folks.
Because
It's gonna be these independent films, maybe on independent streaming services. That's gonna be the future, and
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it because it's gonna be films of substance.
Right.
Entertaining films, and yeah.
Yeah. I would look forward to, hey, if they called me and gave me the chance to direct films on YouTube or whatever, I'm in for it, depending on like whatever
Yeah, and
popular
that's
streaming
that's
service.
for anybody that's an aspiring film
Yeah.
director that's watching this podcast. If we
Yeah.
can inspire you to follow your dreams and do it,
Yeah.
that's what we're here for.
Because
Because we
here's
probably love your film.
here's
Love it.
sort of something about me. I'm sort of working on a horror movie idea, but I don't want to give too much away. But I'm trying to think about, depending on like budget wise, how do I want to like structure this, like, and especially I
Right,
want it,
right. And
especially I want to take
to also mention, I'm also working on a horror book.
right,
I'm working on a horror book, like a Stephen King-esque revenge story.
right,
Now, I will let you guys know when it finally comes out, but I am publishing it. It is being published, and I'm literally working on it as we speak.
right,
For those of you that are into that old school 1970s revenge story with a little bit of a twist,
right.
and you just kind of miss that old school Stephen King style, this book,
My
the book is called Dead Girl. It should be on Amazon as soon as I'll know. We don't have a set date, but I'll keep you guys posted.
right. My horror idea is more on like a little bit of the slasher and like the psychological side of where like is kind of like Jigsaw or like
Right,
Doctor or the Abominable like Doctor Fives from with Vincent Price, where he like trying
right.
to prove his point of how he feels like he's given up on society and he feels like society like did not care about him. That's more the theme of I'm going for.
That sounds awesome. I'd
Yeah,
say
yeah,
I'd say go with it. Go with it.
yeah.
Do it.
Sort of based on me, but minus the act. That part I just made up.
But
just, just, just,
anyway,
just, just getting creative. Just having
yeah,
fun with it.
don't guys, don't ever stop being creative. Don't listen to the people saying that you can't do this or this has to be of a certain mold. Just do it. Just
Right.
do it.
Just like Shia LaBeouf.
Don't.
Just do it.
Yep. And don't make yourself your worst enemy. I'm speaking from personal stuff.
Yeah,
Don't,
same.
because we're, us as creators, if you're a creator, if you make something, we're our own worst critic. We're like, oh,
Yep.
that's not that good. Like, just do it. Just do it. Somebody will like it. Try your best and, just do it.
Right. Right.
Do it, as Arnold would say.
Or even like despite with the popular Shia LaBeouf just do it. I'm surprised there's no like Henry Rollins like animation sequence of like Henry Rollins of like the song Liar or something like that or
Right.
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I have to say to the people watching here is if
Yeah.
you have an idea,
Keep
good
fighting.
idea,
Keep fighting. Never give
just
up.
keep fighting and
Never back down.
don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Right.
Includes the big wigs in Hollywood or
Remember,
whoever. I don't know.
remember everyone, YOLO. You only live once.
You
Make the
only
best of
live
it.
once. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're like Michael Myers or any other supernatural character that keeps
Yeah,
coming
unless you're supernatural and you can come back
back.
to the grave and be like, okay, all right, that was round one, all right. Now for round two.
Nine lives like Catwoman.
9 lives. Anyway,
And anyway, I guess the next thing I want to talk about is we recently had a passing of Rico Browning, the Gill man who played in the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies.
Yeah, definitely a classic movie,
It is.
Creature from the Black Lagoon. I haven't seen it myself. I need to get around to
Oh,
seeing it.
it's one of the it's like probably like the last best of like the Universal monsters because when you look at their like early history from the 30s to 40s, that was like their golden age, their big but I will admit the 40s was like hit or miss and it was dying down because at that point they were just making like
Right.
sequels for money and because it was during World War II, nobody found the monsters scary at that point because they were more scared about what was going on in World War II at the time. And in the 50s, it was more of when you think that they were like just out of ideas, get the Creature from the Black Lagoon was their last best one. But of course, some of the other ones they were making were just B movie quality and not really the best and just made for money.
Yeah, listen, not every film can be good.
No, no. That was the last of the best of the Universal monsters. And of course, they made two more sequels, but they did not top the first movie. And it's last October, I did a review of all three of the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies. The first one, classic. The sequels, the second one is okay, but it's just no, it doesn't top the first movie. The third one, it's forgetful.
Right. And let me ask you something.
Sure.
Now, this is something that's always kind of bugged me ever since they rebooted. What do you think the current like monster reboot universe, the dark universe that Universal is trying to do is missing? What do you think is missing?
It's missing Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr., and it's missing Rico Browning, and it's also missing
That caliber of actors and stuff.
well that it's also missing the dark gothic atmosphere and also the dramatics of
Yeah,
yeah. And it's also missing like why the monsters are misunderstood.
yeah, this is true. I feel in terms of gothic horror, I feel like the gothic horror, the thing that's missing from it today is the imagery.
Yes.
That German expressionist stuff
Yes. Yes.
and just that atmosphere, that
Well, when you
creepy
look
atmosphere that you can just drink in and just look at the sets. And
right.
it's funny that the only film that kind of has that now is actually the new Munsters remake.
Semi-close. Well,
You
let's just
know,
say that's as close as I got to like somewhat of like modern day Universal to a degree, but in color, not in black and white.
yeah, there was a not a Wolfman film, but I forget what it was called, like Night of the Wolf or something like that, recently, black and white film.
Oh yes, yes, I heard about
What was it
it's on Disney.
called?
Let me check. I know what you're talking about because one of my favorite YouTubers did a review of it. It was, let's see,
Yeah, I
like
have no idea. I
I
remember
know it's
James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, was
yes, he
talking
did.
about it.
Or actually, let me look that up. Wait a minute. Cinemassacre, Monster Madness. Werewolf by Night. That's what it was called.
Werewolf by Night. Yeah, that seemed pretty interesting. That seemed to
It did.
kind of get the whole werewolf, classic werewolf kind of formula down, which we
Yeah.
hadn't had. We hadn't had a good werewolf movie in forever.
No, probably. Well, I mean, well, Dog Soldiers was pretty good.
Dark Soldiers was all right.
Yeah, not great, but it was better than the shitty sequel to American Werewolf in London, American Paris, which was just atrocious and an
Yeah.
insult to the first movie.
Yep. Exactly.
A couple of years ago, I did a review of only the first one. I mentioned the sequel, saying how this is my brief review. That's it. No solo review on it. It's not worth my time reviewing it.
Yep. Some sequels make no sense. We
Oh
talked
no.
on here about the sequel to Carrie,
Right.
Carrie to the Rage.
Yes.
And again, you could just see the studio being like, "We want to make a sequel.
Money. That's it. Capitalism.
Yep, we want to make a sequel." Okay,
Right.
how does this make any sense? How did Carrie,
Have a
if
daughter.
you have a daughter, if any of you have never seen the original Carrie, go watch it so you know what we're talking about. But
Right.
spoilers. So how did Carrie in between the prom and like school,
Pre-prom.
not show, not show, be completely pregnant, unless it was some sort of supernatural thing.
I don't
I mean,
know.
this is the Stephen King universe. Apparently, according to the books, it's run by some sort of space tortoise. It's Stephen
What?
King.
I wonder.
Um,
I wonder what Stephen King would think of the Carrie sequel. That was just not necessary because again, it
I
was
I don't know. He might have some explanation for it.
maybe
You know?
because I
Unless
saw.
it's The Shining. He hates
I know, but I love The
Kubrick's
Shining
Shining.
though. Despite,
He
I mean, okay, I
hates
can respect
Kubrick.
why, because the book is different. But come on, it's Kubrick, Nicholson. What more can you ask for? Especially
Yeah,
Kubrick.
yeah, and I guess I can understand. I mean, if someone made a movie into my book, and it was
Yeah,
maybe slightly too
different.
different, I'd be like,
Well, that's Hollywood for you. They have to make the book different than the movie. That's just how it goes.
yeah. I mean, I can't really think of many movies that were by the letter,
Right.
like just like the book,
Yeah,
like
well,
without
I
some.
hear I hear that Red Dragon, the reboot to Manhunter is sort of like almost close to the book, but
Yeah.
again, my friend said it wasn't bad, but it's like, it kind of went too far with like trying to make it too close to the book.
Right, and I do love for those of you who don't know, Manhunter is the original Silence of the Lambs, the
Yes, yes,
original Red Dragon,
yes,
deals with Hannibal Lecter. Manhunter,
yes.
for those
It's a
of you
great
who don't
movie.
know, is great. It's
Oh, it
actually a
is.
great horror
It's
film.
excellent. I just love it how like where you have this guy who is like trying to solve a case, but the thing is, he was retired because of post-traumatic stress disorder, where he was almost one of Hannibal Lecter's victims,
Right,
and in order to try to capture the Tooth Fairy serial killer, he's trying to think like him. Like, what is the Tooth Fairy thinking? That how can I be like?
right, exactly. And
But that has a
I
negative
love,
impact on him.
yeah, I love how different. I forget the actor's name, um,
But William Peter,
but
or no, Brian Cox,
his
who played.
version of Lecter. His version of Hannibal Lecter very, very different from
It is, but
Hopkins' theatrical
it is,
version,
it is, but he's not
where
really.
his
He's not really in the movie that much, though. It's really hard to comment about the differences sometimes.
well, to put it in retrospect, for those of you who haven't seen it, he's a lot more subtle and a lot more realistic.
Right.
You know, what's kind of unnerving about him is how he's just so calm and collected. Where if you know Hopkins' version, you can tell right away, oh yeah, he's a cannibalistic psychopath. You can absolutely
Yeah.
tell right away. But this version of Lecter, he's just a guy,
Right.
and he's the thing that's so unsettling about him is he's so normal that you can almost kind of see being friends with him, sorta. It's weird.
Well, then again, he was a doctor before, and like all like brilliant smart men like Hannibal Lecter, it shows how like a smart guy like Hannibal Lecter is crazy and has issues.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When you watch both movies of like Silence of the Lambs and Manhunter, like the camera view of like where like when William Peterson's character sees him in prison asking him questions about the Tooth Fairy, the camera's like pointed where you see the bars behind the William Peterson's character, because it just shows how he feels like a prisoner, despite the one that Hannibal Lecter's the one in prison. He feels like a prisoner because of how he's trying to do his best to capture
Right,
Tooth Fairy,
right.
the serial killer. And
Exactly.
even Hannibal Lecter has power inside prison.
All right. Yeah. But yeah, definitely check it out, guys.
Yeah,
Manhunter.
yeah, Manhunter's
Check it
great.
out. But anyways, is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I think that's just about summarizes everything. I think we're gonna wrap things up soon.
Okay. Oh, we can wrap things up now. I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Let's not go
All right.
overboard.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We are Creatures of the Night. I've been Wolfman Sam. This is my partner Johnny Buff Guns, and we'll see you all next time.
See you later.